And it was 2 days ago on January 22nd, 2023, that I finally finished Babylon's Ashes, the 6th book of The Expanse by James S.A. Corey. Oh boy. So we're going to jump right into my announcement / disclaimer. I have said this disclaimer in other videos, but this is the video where it's most important that I say it. In the middle of reading this book, I got a concussion, I hit my head. Later on, I got COVID too, so there's been a lot of delays in reading this book. And it does need to be known that I did have to restart from the beginning because I forgot more than I thought I forgot after I hit my head. So I restarted from the beginning, but I was going really fast through the first half so I could get to the second half and finish the book. So this entire video may be slightly compromised by the situation, and so this is a even more biased than usual book review because a lot of circumstances fell on this book, and this is probably one of the worst books that this could have happened to as well, given some of the circumstances I'll talk about in non-spoilers and spoilers. But this was not the book to have that happen on out of all the books I've read in my life. So I do feel bad about that, and I just want to apologize ahead of time throughout this video. If you've read this book before and you're like, man, this person's having some weird takes, that's probably why. But I think I have enough notes together that we can get through this. We got this. Yay. Now, all of that being said, definitely an interesting book. Some interesting things are going on. I feel like this book, we're getting to non-spoilers now, this book was kind of like a breather, I feel. It's more of a breather from the last few books. Every book has been escalated. And this one still escalated in its own right, but in a way where you can breathe. It's more of a different kind of intense. It's like an individual kind of intense rather than like a epic scale kind of intense. So that is one of my main observations for non-spoilers. Another observation to have for non-spoilers is that this is the book that breaks the pattern. Every other book, you have Holden and 3 other perspectives, and the author's like always stuck by that, other than the prologue and epilogue. And the author's always stuck by that. In this book, you jump perspectives all the time. And that is one of the reasons why this was a bad book for me to hit my head during, because we jump between so many perspectives and we don't return to those people, which makes it harder for me to remember them. And when you lose the memory of all that, it's even worse. So it changed up the pattern, and it also changed up my pacing and how I read the book because they changed it. And that's also just part of how I am as a person. If there's a pattern, I can read it faster, do it more, like I get used to it. So the first books, I'll be slow until I can like get excited, and then I'll read fast. And then second and third book go faster. When something like this happens, it'll slow me down. So I think it's interesting. I don't particularly like the choice. I can see elements of it that I like because you get all kinds of perspectives from all kinds of different sides, and you get a hop to someone's perspective at an important moment for them. So it gives the authors like so much freedom. Like you get to see a lot of people. Like you see a lot of people. Some people you only see once. Some people you only see twice in the whole book. But you get a snippet in their perspective after what happened in the last book. I think that was what they were going for, and I can 100% get that. It just doesn't work for me as a reader. And that's my overall take on that. I have seen other people who are like, yes, they finally like let go of the pattern. So people think different things about this. This is kind of up to you. But for me, I would have liked the sticking to 4 perspectives thing. It's easier for me to remember, and it kind of like just builds on those characters a lot. But we have been building on the same characters for quite some time now. Well, there's been new characters every book, I guess. So that's kind of a lie. I take that back. But it gave more freedom to explore a lot of different people. So there is definitely that. Now, I think, see, this is where I have to debate what counts as spoilers and what doesn't, because just mentioning the names of some of the perspectives is kind of already alluding to things that people who are in books 4 or 5 would be like, what the hell? So I'm going to be very careful here in this video about that. Generally, less intense. I said that. This is kind of a breather. It's kind of slower going. However, space battles are prevalent in this book. There are space battles. There are space armies. There are fights. There are torpedoes. There are all kinds of things. This one is pretty much mostly in space with some very small breaks on planetary bodies, but not a lot. Mostly in space. A lot of talking, a lot of chattering. There's a little bit of like some firefighting, a tiny bit. But for the most part, you have a lot of space journey, a lot of reflections, a lot of politics in this one for sure. Very politics heavy. Very politics heavy. You have meetings, you have speeches, you have, man, what's the word for that? That kind of gives away too much. You have people making important decisions or brave decisions and deciding what side they are on and how many sides are there and stuff like that. And we start to get into like the question of how do we solve this? How do we solve all the things that have been happening in the last few books? How do we just barely begin to even actually make progress and get somewhere as a society? Not the series, as a society. So we start to dive into that, and this is the book where I think the main characters have had the most time, except for Amos. Amos doesn't really change, I'm just going to say that, but otherwise the characters have had the most time to like review their perspective and change. And this is the book that I've seen like the biggest change in the main character, Holden, for sure. Like you can tell from his like speech and how he talks. It is very different to how he talked in the previous books. I can say that pretty confidently. And so this is the book where you start to like really recognize like this event, the events that have happened here have awakened views. But at the same time, it's also, it really shines a light on the issue, on society, on humanity as a whole. And I saw a lot of things that are direct parallels to real life right now. And it's really kind of funny. Because like there are things that I was like, yep, I know people who are that. I may have been that person at some point. And it's kind of funny reading through it and seeing that call out and just being able to recognize like exactly how true it is, because it's 100% true. And there's just a lot of social commentary in this because we're on ships so much and we have all of those meetings, we have the people talking, we have all the politics. A lot of those societal discussions have to come up, and I really like them personally. I thought they were really good. And there's a really good quote, I have to say it. I'm not going to deem it a spoiler just because it's a fantastic quote and you can't blame me. Let me find it. I don't want to mess it up. I know whose perspective it's in. It's before that. Other than me trying to find this page, this should be a short video, because in terms of non-spoilers, there isn't as much I can say without giving stuff away. What I will say, one critique in quotes, given my circumstances, I have on this book, is that there is a plot line that comes up, and it only comes up twice in the whole book, and I have no idea where it's going. Like, there were several times I was like, oh, it's going to come up, and then it doesn't come up, and it's just really confusing. I don't know where it's going. I suppose it might be part of the next book, and that's why they brought it up in this book. But not only, it's not that it wasn't ever addressed. That's not the issue. It's the fact that it felt like it was going to be like the main plot when it first came up. Like, I thought it was serious. I thought like we're going to like dive right in. I thought it was going to be all about that, and then it never came up again. And they just like hung me in suspense, and then now the suspense is like completely dead because they didn't follow up on it. So I think that's interesting. Again, it might be due to the nature of how I read this book, but that was my observation. Because I definitely, that's the one scene, I'm not kidding when I say this, that is one of two scenes I remember from before it hit my head. The first time I was reading it, because it was the time before it hit my head that I was listening to it. So that's very funny to me. But I remember like my exact reaction when I was listening to that. And I still feel that way, like when I went back and like skimmed the scene. It's very interesting. It's just like a spike. And it comes up like in a mini spike, and then it doesn't come up again. So I wonder if I missed something, or if it's just part of the next book. And if so, if it is part of the next book, you have to read the next book like right after this one, which I am. All right, here's the quote. I love this quote. On impulse, she took down the tactical display, leaving just a wide scatter of drive plumes all around the system, and then added the star field. It was the widest concerted attack ever. Hundreds of ships on at least 4 sides, dozens of stations, millions of lives. Among the stars, it didn't stand out. I really like that quote. It's very symbolic of humanity and how it goes back to the pale blue dot. All of our wars, all of our history, all the like stupid like scabbles, that's not a word. Scruples. What's the word? Little battles we have against each other, arguments we have, all of it is contained to this one planet we're on. And in the grand scheme of things, like every small thing we fight over, it's like, what is it among the stars? I really like that quote because that's something we had a whole like debate essay thing on last semester or last year. And I don't know, I think, I'm not saying it's a great perspective to have. I think it's an interesting perspective to think about. And that also leads to something in the epilogue is how kids are changed by all the events of these books. It's not something that's like fully come up yet, but the characters in the epilogue have a kid, and you can really see like the impact of how that kid's growing up. And when you compare it to yourself, whatever age you are as a reader, you can really just see like, man, imagine growing up in that life. It is very different. It is a lot more blunt, and it gives you some perspective regardless of how you grew up. Oops. There's just a certain layer to like growing up in space, like not just in space, but like unknown space. That's kind of freaky. So, yep. And then that's the last thing I'll say, non-spoilers. Space is freaky, and I love it. And the authors played into that in this book. Like, it's played into before, particularly with Sebulba, like, for sure. But, again, we had another instance of, that is freaky as all hell. And I think that was probably my biggest spike of interest in this book, was like, oh boy, something's gonna happen. How intense is it gonna be? And, like, not knowing if it was nothing was gonna happen, or if, like, everything was gonna happen. So, that was definitely fascinating. For sure. Alright, with all of that said, we get into spoilers, which should also be short. I don't have all that much to say, but I do have some key things to say. So this is your time to leave. Alright. I think the big thing I have to mention, like right now, is Philip. Philip, and Marco, and Philip. His arc. This book is pretty much mostly very entirely focused on Philip's arc. How he's reflecting, how he's thinking, how he starts in hatred, and he still like carries on that hatred, and then he goes to jealousy, and then he goes to like trying to like prove himself to himself and to his father, trying to like redeem himself, trying to get the approval of his father, and then finding out that his father isn't really approving him, isn't really accepting his victories as his, but as his own. That was terrible wording, but Marco wasn't saying that they were Philip's victories. They were saying they were Marco's victories, even though it was Philip doing them, and stuff like that. And he really just started to like think about his relationship with his father, but also having a lot of nightmares about his mom and what happened in the last book with his mom. And he keeps telling himself that he has this hatred and he has this like disgust and everything towards his mom. But throughout the book, you see him like slowly caving in, even if he doesn't notice it. And he doesn't do it for her. And I think that's what like really like sells it and makes it fit. He finds out, like, he sees Marco's excitement. He finds out like what it is Marco's actually doing. He's not coordinating an attack, but rather he's just against two individuals. And it's not about inner planets and war and all of that, but it's really just about his honor, how he feels he deserved more and is jealous of someone. And that's what drove him to do everything he did. Philip figures that out, and he's just like, I'm done with this. Like, just on the go, complete instinct. He stands right there at the docks, and he decides, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to go, like, try to kill my mother. And turns in his things and gets a job right there at the docks on whatever planet it was. I want to say it was Ceres. It might not be Ceres. Planetary body. So Philip's whole arc throughout the book, every single scene, like even like the itty bitty tiny things, even the things that feel like they didn't have to do with the arc, still contributed to the arc in the most fascinating way. So like there's like some like thing on like animal cruelty on the television, like a bear just being confused where to go, stuff like that. I said animal cruelty, animals and life not being able to live. It was the thing right after the bear in particular that had nothing to do with something Philip did, but it still contributed to like those feelings of Philip's introspection. I've had a lot of introspection over the last few years, mostly because of this, and that introspection has changed me as a person. Like not just identities and all of that, but it changes how I think. It changes how I've talked, and I'm now like extroverted. Like it's fundamentally changes you when you really turn into yourself. And I think if you were to like deeply analyze Philip's speech in this book, I think even that changes. I think it's fascinating. And also the fact that he puts Nagata as his last name. That's like the selling point. Like that is like the like it is written in stone point, and it's just great. I love it. That's my big highlight of this book is probably Philip's arc, because I love it. And then the second highlight, the moment where I was like, whoops, Spike, is Marco go disappear. Like he just disappears. He sees the molecules coming off. He doesn't see the molecules coming off the page, but he sees things start to go into particles and then start to become molecules, which he can't see until he was gone. And something just went whoosh, which who knows went whoosh. No idea. I'm sorry, my ability to do English has not been great today. But something came at him, and we have no idea what it is. So there's still some unknowns for the next books, for sure. And I feel there's going to be some more alien topics next books. All right. Throughout the whole book, I was trying to figure out what their solution was going to be to the issue. That's kind of one of the things that came up last book is what is going to happen to the OPA, or what was the OPA? What's going to happen to Belters? What's going to happen to Earth after what has happened? Like, how can this be solved? Because this is kind of like an economy is going meow. Not just economy, but like resources are going meow. What are we going to do about that? And there's a pretty good solution at the end of this book, and that's where we're going onward. But I definitely think there's going to be some issues, and that's why we have several books left. In fact, we have 3 books left, 7, 8, and 9. Soon. The one thing I was talking about in non-spoilers where it came up and then it never came up again was Prax. Prax had this, like, analysis that someone gave him about the protomolecule, like how it can, like, affect things. And then the person who did that research died, and it was all sus. And then the Free Navy was, like, confiscating the area, and, like, Prax was like, the Free Navy's here. And the Free Navy interrogated him and then let him go. And that is everything I can pretty much remember from that plot, other than Prax feeling very iffy about sending it to Earth and about the data inside of it and what it can mean. So I definitely think that's going to come up, and I definitely think it's going to be more prevalent. I just hope I didn't miss something about it. I hope. I really like the scene with, is it Nami? I don't actually know how to say her name. Nono, Nami, Anna. The prologue is in Anna's perspective, if I remember correctly. Oh no, it's in Namona's perspective. But it has to do with Anna. Yeah. So they're on Earth at first, at the beginning of the book, when Earth is, like, you know, in a disaster. Nobody has food. Nobody has all kinds of resources. There's still militias and people fighting over resources and murder and everything. Everything that comes from an apocalypse. It's all there. And Earth is just messed up. And we're just following the perspective of her just trying to, like, feed her kids and stuff like that. And it's just a rough way to start a book. It really, like, right off the bat, it puts you, like, in this scenario, like, man, this ship is serious. And then you go to space, and you kind of forget that for a time. But it comes up in, like, little snippets throughout the book. And at the very end, as I mentioned before, we see them again, and we get to see, like, how she's growing up, living on a ship on the way to the exoplanets, to the ring gate planets. And she's going to grow up there. Like, that's how she'll be raised. She won't ever see a city probably in her lifetime, because it takes too long to even build a city. She'll just be living in a town. There might be the only town on the planet for a very long time. And she'll probably just be, like, helping, like, support that mine, find resources, make food for people. And that's pretty much it. No university, because there aren't universities really anymore. And that's that. I think it's kind of fascinating, and you can see, like, the mom, like, accepting the idea, but also being like, I hope. There's so much uncertainty with moving to an unknown planet that no one's ever lived on before. So you can tell that she's feeling that stress along with it. And I really hope the best for them, for sure. Like, I love those characters. And I also love the opening line of that. I'm not much for religion myself, but I love that Anna is like, Anna loved the Bible and felt comforted and lifted by what she found in it, but Tolstoy was an uncontested for second place. I think that's a funny line. But yeah, I feel it's a great prologue, it's a great epilogue. Even if it doesn't, like, link to the story, like, entirely, it's perfect. I love it. It's great. So, definitely want to point that out. And then, yeah, one of the things I want to mention is, like, Holden, like, disabling, like, the missiles and stuff like that to, like, not kill Naomi's kid. Part of me feels like, but it's not entirely sure, feels like Holden is also just tired of the war. He's tired of the killing people. He's tired of all of these arguments. And now he's really learning about it. He did some things where he was, like, trying to be supportive and trying to be nice. And sometimes it's not the most supportive and nice. That's very accurate to real life when it comes to trying to support groups that we aren't a part of. We have a tendency to do that. It's not great. Sometimes we do it for the groups we are a part of too, and that's also not great. So I'm talking about identity groups. So you can definitely see Holden doing that, but you can also see Holden's impact by doing it. And again, it just echoes what I see in real life a lot. So I think that's definitely fascinating. And you also get a little bit of insight because there's so many perspectives in this. You get insight into like each of the crew members. I don't think there's perspective I don't think there's a chapter in Clarissa's perspective. At least not that I can remember. But she has like her bits. Pretty much everyone like has their bit. Alex has a few scenes himself. Naomi gets a bunch. Pa gets a lot. Oh my god, I did not know that Michio Pa was with the character that died on Medina Station. I did not know that she was with her. And when that came up, I was like, oh, that sucks. And then I found out that she has like her own polyamory group. And I was like, okay, you have people now. You have a support group. Good for you. I love you. Go you. And then multiple people in her support in her polyamory group died. And I was like, that has to be like a worst case scenario. Because you lost not one husband, but like multiple people you were married to. Like, that is rough. That's rough. So, feel bad for her. And I'm curious how she will carry on with the legacy in the next book, apparently. Because it got handed down to her. And we'll see how the future comes. Alright, I think that's all I got. Compared to the last few books, I don't like it as much. But that's because it's a very different change of pace and also circumstances. And also dropping fucking asteroids on Earth. Hello? How do the big army was supposed to be like a step up from that, but nah. Just putting Earth into apocalypse. I think that's pretty top tier. So, don't like it as much, but I still think it's a good book. I give it 4 stars on Goodreads. So, there you go. Woohoo. Woo. So, I'm already on to the next book. I've only listened to the prologue. I haven't gotten much further than the prologue. I'm renting it through the library, and my loan is about to expire, so it might be a while. I might buy it on Amazon. But Amazon takes like 2 weeks to ship here, so it'll still be a while. But soon, we'll be on book 7. And then soon, we'll be on book 8. And then soon, we'll be on book 9, the final book. Soon. And then I have some plans put together for after book 9. There's still some micro adjustments going on, but we're getting it together. Alright, with all of that said, do I own any new books? What's new and what's next is usually the next section. What's next is the next book of the series, book 7 of The Expanse. Is called Persepolis Rising. Don't know what it means, but I'm gonna Google about the titles when I finish the series. I want to do it before I finish the series in case of spoilers, but afterwards I'll Google about the titles and the lore. And we'll see about all the shorts and novellas I've skipped. There's a lot that I've missed. So I'll like gander at those. It seems like most of them aren't like very important to the plot, but some of them are adjacent, some of them aren't. So I'll explore that eventually. And then I don't think I own a new book other than textbooks. I don't think so. From my last video? I don't think so. If anything, it's a Kindle book. But I can't think of a Kindle book I got and didn't tell you all about. Unless it's the novellas. I think it was the novellas. So I got all of the Powder Mage novellas, except for Siege of Tilper and the Mad Lancers. But everything other than those 2 novellas, I read them in like a day. So Powder Mage novellas are mostly done. And I love most of them. Not all of them, but I love most of them. And I especially love 2 of them. I absolutely adore Servant of the Crown. I think that's pretty top tier. If you love Thomas, you have to read that novella. You don't have to. But if you want more lore on his meeting his wife, definitely read it because she's badass and awesome and I love her. Okay. And then, other than that, I think that's it. I don't think I've gotten any other book. wow, any other new books. But I plan to get new books soon. Wait, hold on. 2 weeks ago? When was 2 weeks ago? I might have already. I think I already did this, but I also have Trust of the Emerald Sea. I'm pretty sure I already announced this, but I have Trust of the Emerald Sea. In case I didn't announce it. I think that's it. Alright. Have a good one, and I will see you all next time when I finish Persepolis Rising. Bye-bye.